What if the NFL playoffs started today? How do the playoffs look? Does your team make it? Who could be that next Cinderella team? And most importantly, who wins the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the day? That's what we're here to figure out today. Of course, I'm joined by Amir. He's here each and every Thursday, but we also have a special guest, first-time guest on the show, AJ. How you doing today? And I guess welcome to the podcast.
I've been planning to join on the show in a while. Just happy to be able to have a time on my schedule to join this spectacular show. Road to 7K. We're going up, Owen. Just happy what I'm seeing from you.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, road to 7K, like you touched on there. The growth has been crazy as of late. But Amir, of course, how you doing on this Thursday morning?
Doing good, man. I'm excited every Thursday to hop on this show, man. I'm happy to be back once again.
Absolutely. So we're going to start here. We're going to get right into in the AFC side of things. As of right now, these are, of course, we're using these teams as of today. So all current injuries, everything as of today. That's what we're basing this video off of. So hopefully that's pretty cut and dry for you guys at home. But the 2 seed right now is the Baltimore Ravens. They're 9-3, of course, pretty impressive season to this point. And then they face a division foe, the Cleveland Browns, who have lost 2 straight games. But, I mean, hey, at least Joe Flacco had a pretty good game. So how we'll do this is, AJ, you'll start, Amir, you're second, and I'm third. And we'll just go through each and every game. Of course, break it down, say what you have to say, and we'll give our predictions. So, AJ, who do you have in this first matchup between the AFC North opponents?
No, being a Browns fan, this is extremely tough pick for me. And being a delusional Browns fan at that, I would love to go with the Browns, but I'm gonna go with the Ravens.
The
Lamar
Ravens here?
Jackson. Yeah,
I'm
I'm
sorry,
going
go
with
ahead.
the Ravens. Lamar Jackson just loves to show out versus us. No matter how good our defense is, he loves to show out. I think his receivers step up. They have a solid defense. We have no quarterback. I don't know how it looks out.
Yeah,
Ravens.
I can already see Odell scoring a touchdown in this game if it was the hypothetical game, and of course taking it to social media. But then Amir, who would you have in this matchup? Do the Browns maybe squeak by with a win?
All right, so for my pick, I would say this is potentially a sleeper, but for this game, I got to go Baltimore here. Just because I feel like Baltimore overall is the more complete team. We just aren't ready, and me and you talk about this every week about how our defense, you know, is an exception in the league to potentially, helping us kind of get over the hump and make a run. But facing Baltimore round one, which is arguably the best team in the AFC now, I just don't think we have a chance.
So majority rules there. There's 3 of us. Obviously, 2 out of 3 is majority. So we're gonna have the Baltimore Ravens moving on. If there is a dispute, I guess a good thing for you guys here, we have a couple of those here where one of us selects one team and then the other 2 have the other. We're just gonna go with the majority here in today's video, and if we have a split, then we'll talk about that as we go on in the podcast. But I will agree with you guys here that Lamar Jackson, I mean, at full health, of course, this is more of a question and an argument, with Deshaun Watson, most notably Nick Chubb. Of course, if Denzel Ward is actually going to be healthy for a strand of games, it's a different question. But as of right now, Joe Flacco against his old team, I'm going to take the quarterback that's probably 10 tiers ahead of Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson. And I mean, I guess he's playing at an MVP level this year. So give me Baltimore. Of course, there's not much analysis there. The Browns have had a lot of injuries. But then we move over. The 3 and 6 seed in the AFC wildcard round. We have the reigning Super Bowl champions. I think 2 of the last 3 years, the Chiefs have won it. And you have Patrick Mahomes. They lost a game last week to Jordan Favre. Uh,
Okay, man.
Hall of Fame level quarterback
Jordan
in Jordan
Love.
Love. But then they're hosting the Gardner Minshew-led Indianapolis Colts team. I mean, who would have thought they would be here at this point after losing Anthony Richardson? Go Gators. But Gardner Minshew stepped up and they've won 4 straight despite not even having, Anthony Richardson for one, but then also Jonathan Taylor. But is there any shocker here, AJ? Do you think the Colts, with their defense and Gardner Minshew in this offense playing at the level that they are, can there be an upset in this game against the reigning champions?
I mean, there can be an upset. I mean, it's the NFL any given Sunday. But I'm still rolling with the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs still figured out their offensive woes on the Colts. And I think Mahomes just outplays Minshew. I mean, the Colts defense has been pretty well, but I'm still going with the Chiefs here. I think their defense is incredible. They'll be able to slow down the Colts.
Yeah, I mean, coming into this year, the Kansas City Chiefs, I mean, well, I'll say this, coming into the year of the AFC, we were looking at it before the year like, man, we have legitimately 4 or 5 teams that can win this conference this year. but with just all the injuries that have happened at that side of the conference, it kind of looks cut and dry on one team that's going to win it all in the AFC this year. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. Amir, what are your thoughts on this game, and do the Chiefs keep rolling?
Yeah, I mean, this game is pretty self-explanatory. Kansas City is a way better team. It's pretty much impossible to really compete, in the NFL nowadays with having a capable quarterback. And, despite Indianapolis 7-5, which is shocking the whole entire world, despite them going on that 4-game win streak, Minshew has not played well. I think in that 4-game stretch, he's thrown 3 touchdowns and 3 picks, and they barely squeaked by. I think once the playoffs hit, it just won't happen. It won't be able to happen no matter who they face. And so I'm taking Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only saving grace here, the only argument you can really make for the Indianapolis Colts is, well, they have Jonathan Taylor. Maybe if that offensive line and Jonathan Taylor could get going. But again, these are as of today, and Jonathan Taylor's out. So you have an offense that's going to rely on Gardner Minshew and Michael Pittman. I don't know if that's a recipe for success against Andy Reid and the Chiefs. So shout out to Shane Steichen. He's done an amazing job in his first year, but we're all going to go with the Chiefs here. They move on, and they'll take on the Baltimore Ravens in the second round. Now, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll start here, and I'm going to throw my prediction out there again. This is as of today, and it's going to be C.J. Beathard as the Jaguars quarterback. So for that reason, that's really the only reason I need. I know it's C.J. Beathard, and it's Mitch Trubisky in this game. I nothing to really ride home about. No, it's not a reason why you're going to turn on your TV. But I will go with the Steelers because they have a little bit of a better defense, and I'm going to trust TJ Watt to get after CJ Beathard enough times for the Steelers to pull off a mini upset here. Excuse me. But then I'll switch it to you, AJ. A 4-5 matchup. These matchups can go either way, especially with the injuries to the Jaguars. Do you have the Jaguars pulling this out, even with no Trevor Lawrence?
I did. I'm gonna stay with my pick, being a notorious Steelers hater. I'm gonna go with the Jags with CJ Beathard. I know Trevor Lawrence got hurt. They still have weapons. They still have ETN. They still have Ridley. I know Kirk got hurt. They have a solid defense this year. I don't think the Steelers get to squeak out enough points, even though their defense can hold the Jags down to a certain extent. I still think they pull off that win without Trevor Lawrence. I got Jags.
Yeah, so I spoiled it there, of course, Amir. It looks like you already have the Jags as well. I'll have you break down why that is the case. But I will say for those at home, this is going to be a game that's going to be 13-10. This is going to be a game that's ugly, from start to finish. It's going to be 2 game managing quarterbacks just trying to get by until that next week. And it's not going to be pretty, however way you put it. But Amir, you have the Jaguars as well. And why do you think CJ Beathard turns into the next Nick Foles?
Yeah, so just like everything AJ just said, Pittsburgh's offense will not get them over the top in the playoffs. I think no matter what team they play, it just won't work for them. And seeing CJ Beathard come in versus Cincy, I mean, honestly, he played well. He came right in. He made an immediate impact. And like Jacksonville still has all these weapons. And, if it was any time for Trevor Lawrence to get hurt, now would be the perfect time. Ridley has been getting the groove going. ATN is playing at an offensive player of the year level or close to it. And this Jacksonville team is looking legit. And despite Jake Browning looking like Tom Brady, against him this past week, I still think Jacksonville can completely dominate this team on all levels.
So just to clarify here, of course, I had the Steelers, and I'll talk about that in the next matchup against the Miami Dolphins, who have the number 1 seed in the AFC as of today, of course. But the majority says the Jaguars move on. So for the graphics wise, the Jaguars will be moving on. So in our AFC wildcard round, we have all the favorites, I guess is a good way to put it. We have the Baltimore Ravens at the 2 seed. We have the Kansas City Chiefs in their matchup in the second round. And then we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. So in the NFC wildcard, we have the red hot, maybe the best team in football. We'll talk about that later. But the San Francisco 49ers, they, of course, started 5-0. They had a 3-game losing streak. And then they said, you know what? We're not good enough. We don't have enough talent. Let's go trade for Chase Young, a top 2 pick just a few years ago. And since that trade, they've been undefeated, and they just blew out the best team in football, or at least most people would say, in the Philadelphia Eagles. Then they play Jordan Rodgers, a guy that's at this point has had his best strand of football. This last month for Jordan Love has been electric. and he's been dominating teams left and right, and they're against good opponents. So to me, Jordan Love, he's playing his best career football, but I will stick with the favorite here in a team that is destined for the Super Bowl and not a playoff win, and that is the 49ers. But AJ, who do you have in this matchup?
This honestly seems like it'll be like a come out game for Jordan Love, knowing that he's the next up
Oh,
franchise
if he wins this, he's top 5 in the league.
He's honestly, if he pulls off this upset, I will call him Jordan Rodgers. But I'm rocking with the Niners. I don't think he's ready enough to face the Niners in San Francisco in the wild card. So I'm rolling out with the Niners.
Amir, I'll kick it over to you. Of course, can Jordan Love continue its magic, or do the Niners take care of business at home?
The Niners dominate. Even if Jordan Love plays well, I mean, this Packers team isn't ready. They still got some injuries they got to figure out. Guys are still kind of banged up. Just now starting to get healthy, and playing against a team like this, you got to be 100% healthy with no type of setbacks, no type of handicaps going on. So the Niners by 35.
Yeah, I think really it's going to be a blowout
Like
because I think it will be a blowout because the Packers just don't have an offensive line, and that is where San Francisco specializes. If there is their defensive front, I think Jordan Love might get sacked, 6, 7, maybe even 8 times in this matchup. But then we have an NFC North rivalry. We have the Detroit Lions, which some people in our group chat would differ the opinion of mine on the Detroit Lions, but they're the 3 seed. They're 9-3. They take on the Joshua Dobbs-led Minnesota Vikings, who do have Justin Jefferson in this matchup. So we can throw that out there. He will have Justin Jefferson. But I will kick it over to you, AJ. Just like always, NFC North matchup. Who do you have in this matchup? Do you have the Lions continuing this run, or do you have Joshua Dobbs leading an upset?
I think the Lions continue the greatest run to segregation. Justin Jefferson he's not going to be able to save them versus the Lions. The Lions have a full complete team. I mean, the Vikings are relying on Josh Dobbs, who's played okay, but I don't see him lifting them up in a playoff game with their defense is playing okay. But I mean, the Lions, I'm taking Jared Goff, Lions by 14 plus.
Yeah, Amir, I know you're not the biggest Jared Goff and Lions fan out there, but the Vikings, they've played 2 straight games and they haven't allowed a touchdown in 2 straight games, yet they're 0-2. Do you think this defense, if they're playing at that level, can they have a chance? I wouldn't be surprised if you pick them here because I know you're not a big Lions guy.
No, I mean, I'm a Lions hater because they are frauds and they are overrated. But they're still better than the Vikings. And, but the one thing about the Vikings that's kind of impressive, I think what they've been missing, when they had Kirk, is the ability to extend plays. And that's really what Josh Dobson has been able to do. Even though he threw 4 picks last week against the Bears, and struggled big time, I think having Justin Jefferson back will somewhat make the game closer than it seems. The Lions all season have been playing down to the competition. And so I think this game could kind of be like a closer game, maybe a 1-score game. But I'm taking the Lions.
Yeah, we'll take the Lions to get a win here and probably by a score or 2. I think it could probably be one of those games that is relatively close, and everybody thinks there's a chance of an upset, but the Lions can pull away at the end of the game. We will have another clean slate here. It will get more interesting as we move into the playoffs, I promise, but a lot of these first-round matchups as of today are kind of cut and dry. This is a matchup I guess could be interesting for the simple fact that Atlanta is home in this matchup, but we have the 6-6 Falcons, not the prettiest 6-6 record so far, but they host the Dallas Cowboys, who are 9-3, maybe the best defense in football, you could argue. But Dak Prescott, to me, is playing his best career football. And I'm just going to put it out there now. I'm going to take the Cowboys in this one pretty easily. But who knows? Maybe Desmond Ridder and Bijan can make this one interesting. Maybe they can actually use Kyle Pitts, but I doubt it. I'll take Cowboys on the road here. AJ, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead. And who are you taking in this matchup? Do you think Bijan can do enough in this matchup to maybe squeak out a win for the home team here?
See, if Arthur Smith maybe know how to use all the weapons on his offense, it wouldn't just be Bijan being the Cowboys, which I would love to see, being a Cowboys hater.
Well, I mean, they have Tyler Algier.
He's great, but I mean, Drake London, Pitts, they don't feed. They have all these weapons, and Arthur Smith, I don't know. I don't know. He needs to go. But I'm pretty much with that. I'm going with the Cowboys. Dak Prescott is going to throw 4+ touchdowns in this game, guaranteed.
Amir, of course, go ahead and break it down. I know you're a big Cowboy fan here in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking the Cowboys, against Desmond who and Bijan who. I mean, it's going to be 42-0. They're going to mop the floor with them. The Falcons, is a team that, is pretty much blessed to be in the worst division of football and shouldn't even be in the playoffs. And so I
Gotcha.
take the Cowboys by 50.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, throw the Buccaneers in there. At least I at least know
Baker.
Baker Mayfield's going to go out slinging the ball down the field and
Yeah.
giving us at least a show. But then we swing back to the AFC for the divisional round. We have the number 1 seed in the Miami Dolphins, and they take on a CJ Beathard-led Jacksonville Jaguars team. I want your guys' opinion. Of course, we're probably all going to have a clean slate here for the Miami Dolphins, but I want your guys' predictions here. If Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk were healthy in this game, does that change your opinion at all, or would you guys still rock with the Dolphins in this one? Of course, all of us are taking the Dolphins, but AJ, I'll start with you. If Lawrence and Kirk were healthy, would you take the Jaguars, or would you still stick with the Miami Dolphins?
No, I'm still not trusting Trevor Lawrence in the playoffs. I think Tua and the Dolphins offense will outlast the Jaguars. I don't think they have anybody to touch Tyreek. I don't care how much they bracket him, double him. I don't see them stopping Tyreek. And plus the Dolphins defense is on the come up. So I think they slow down Trevor Lawrence to still beat them with him and Christian Kirk.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Ramsey, ever since he's showed up after his injury, this defense has been completely different, and they've been on another level statistically, dominating teams left and right, on top of their, of course, high-powered offense. Tyreek Hill, I mean, he's only like 500 yards away from 2,000 yards, the first time that's ever been done in
Indeed.
NFL history, and he's being heavily disrespected. I think he probably should be the MVP frontrunner at the moment, and I guess the talk is around Brock Purdy. I guess it is just a quarterback award. But Amir, I'll ask you the same question. Of course, we know it's CJ Beathard there. We're taking the Dolphins. But if the Jaguars were healthy, does that sway your opinion at all, or do you still rock with the Dolphins?
This game is interesting. I think this game can go either way. A lot of people kind of look at the Dolphins, see they're 9-3, see, they got all these weapons, the explosive offense we obviously see, but this game is going to be decided by one score. The Dolphins is a team that, we really don't know how to feel about them. They look great, look absolutely dominant. And then the next week, they're getting completely shut down and neutralized, once they're pressured. But just like you guys said, the thing that's putting this team over the top is the fact that, they needed somebody else to kind of elevate that secondary, somebody to bounce around the slot, bounce around the outside,
They signed
and,
Amir
be a true
Stewart.
difference maker.
Amir Ramsey.
Jalen
And so,
Ramsey.
them getting Jalen Ramsey was huge. And, we might be able to end up seeing that type of impact with the Lions once CJ Gardner-Johnson comes back.
It just sucks Jalen Phillips went down. I think he could have had a huge impact on their playoff success. But, I mean, again, they still have Bradley Chubb, and maybe he can actually step up and play to his contract. But then on the other side of the AFC, maybe the best matchup we have in the playoffs, aside from the Super Bowl, but we have the Baltimore Ravens, of course, 9-3 and highest point differential in the NFL, dominating defense. They lead the league in sacks. Of course, they also still have Lamar Jackson, no Mark Andrews, but when you have that quarterback, you always have a chance. And then you have the Chiefs, the reigning champions. Of course, I think they've won, 2 of the last 3 years. They're 8-4. Who do you guys have in this matchup here? Do you guys have the Baltimore Ravens or the Kansas City Chiefs? I'll start with you, AJ. Who do you have in this matchup? As again, winner of this might go to the Super Bowl.
Like you said before, I think no Mark Andrews is going to be huge for Lamar even now, especially how it be versus this Chiefs defense. I think the Chiefs, I mean, it'll be a close 1-point game either way, even without Mark Andrews. But I think the Chiefs will figure out Lamar to a certain extent. I think I'm going with the Chiefs here. Mahomes will find a way to convert on third down. And whether it's Travis Kelce or he makes somebody catch the ball with MVS, whoever decides to finally catch the ball. But I'm going with the Chiefs. I think they beat the Ravens. It'll be a tough game.
Amir, go ahead and dive into it. Who are you taking? Does it get interesting here, or are you going to still roll with the Chiefs?
This will be a great game, but I'm gonna roll with the Chiefs here. Mahomes is the one guy who has that it factor. He's gonna find a way to get it done. And based off of what we've seen in history, I mean, the Ravens and Lamar Jackson have folded in the playoffs continuously. Do I think this is probably the best chance they have had by far? But I still don't think they're ready to put them over the top. And Lamar Jackson without Mark Andrews, in his career has struggled. And it kind of changes the whole entire offense and is making Kansas City's job a lot easier to game plan against them defensively.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game will be closer than people think. Not that Baltimore's a bad team or they're a severe underdog in this matchup. However, it's AJ, you touched on it there with the drop issues in this Kansas City offense. If you have Marlon Humphrey on the best wide receiver Kansas City has in Rashee Rice, that's going to be a difficult day for the rookie. But then also if they go and double team Travis Kelce, this Kansas City offense is really going to have to rely on guys like Isaiah Pacheco to carry the load, or MVS, who decides to catch a ball once a month, despite being one of the higher paid wide receivers. I think this matchup can get interesting due to the lack of elite options that Kansas City has offensively. But at the end of the day, they have the best player in football, and that for me is the reason why they get the edge here on the road in Baltimore. And they move on to the AFC Championship against the Miami Dolphins. Interesting matchup there. But then we have an NFC East rivalry. Teams that will play very soon here. I think they might play this weekend. If not, they play in 2 weeks. But we have the Philadelphia Eagles. They got the #1 seed after being blown out, is a generous way to put it, against the 49ers. But then they host the Dallas Cowboys, a 9-3 ball club. Again, maybe one of the best defenses in the NFL. Who do you have in this matchup, AJ? Do you have the Eagles continuing their route back to the Super Bowl, or the Cowboys finally getting that big playoff win?
I'm gonna go with the Eagles. I don't think the Cowboys are gonna ever get past the divisional. Even with Dak, it's not even particularly his fault. I think he plays well in this game. I just don't think the Eagles they will run all over the Cowboys. I don't think they will be able to not run. So even then, Jalen Hurts won't even have to outduel Dak. Dak probably will have a better game than Jalen, but I still think the Eagles will pull it out. They are just a more physical team.
Amir, I'll let you dive into this matchup, and then I want to ask you guys a question. But go ahead, Amir. Who do you have in this matchup as of today?
So this is a great matchup, but I'm going with Philly here. And, remember, Philly is a team who last year, were completely doubted. There were kind of questions throughout the season, like, I mean, they played a cupcake schedule, an easy schedule. They came into the playoffs, dominated, got to the Super Bowl, and they felt like, the game was taken from them. And so this is a team who's going to come into the playoffs with a chip on their shoulder. They just lost to San Fran. And, they're going to cruise through these playoffs, and their eyes are all focused on San Fran. And so, I think, this might end up being a high-scoring game, especially the way Philly's secondary has been struggling, the way Dak has been playing well. I think, Dallas matches up well, but I still don't see them winning this game, so I'm taking Philly.
Yeah, I will take Philly as well. Of course, in the preseason, I had them going to the Super Bowl, losing to the Cincinnati Bengals, but of course, some injuries derailed that opinion. But I want to ask you guys this question because I think, in all honesty, I'm hoping that this is a blowout. So Mike McCarthy, they find a new coach in Dallas. But if Trayvon Diggs was healthy for this matchup, with how Deron Bland has been playing all season, does that maybe sway your opinion? If Dallas has a fully healthy secondary against these elite wide receiver options in Philly, does that change your guys' opinion at all? Or would you guys still rock with Philly in a matchup like this?
Honestly, I mean, I still choose Philly. I mean, because Philly's, their mantra is winning up front on both sides of the ball. And, I think that they be even more physical, whether it's on the ground or stopping the run. And so, for that reason, I'm taking Philly.
Yeah, I mean, Philly just had a 4-game stretch against the Bills, Cowboys, 49ers, and Chiefs. I mean, coming into the year, some people would argue 4 of those teams are in the top 5 for talent in the league, and they went 3-1 in that stretch. So to me, yes, they got blown out, but they still had a pretty great month of football over the last 4 weeks. But then we move over to the NFC divisional round. We have the #2 seed San Francisco 49ers, of course, best team in football at the moment, or at least the hottest team in football at the moment. They're taking on the Detroit Lions. Some people will call them frauds. Some people will say they're underrated. But this is an interesting matchup. It's a matchup in the Bay, in San Fran. And I guess at this point, maybe they have the MVP in the league and Brock Purdy. I'll start with you, AJ. Who do you have in this matchup? Do you have the Lions maybe pulling off an upset? Or do you have San Fran just taking care of business?
I would love to see a Lions-Browns Super Bowl, but I'm going to have to rock with the Niners. I don't think the Lions' defense is enough to stop all the weapons they have. Even if Brock Purdy's not playing the best, I don't think they will be physical enough to stop the run first to even think about stopping Debo. But
yeah, I mean, Brandon Ayuk is. I mean, I'll ask you that. Who's the best receiver in that offense for San Fran? Is it Debo Samuel or is it Brandon Ayuk? Two guys. I think I'm still on the side of Brandon Ayuk.
I think it's Brandon Ayuk.
Yes, as a receiver, yeah, Ayuk. But I mean, Debo overall, I mean, it's just overall not just a receiver that makes him a better like player, but receiver. I mean, I don't blame you. He's a number one receiver on
Yeah, I
every.
mean, absolutely. It's that T. Higgins, Jamar Chase situation where you legitimately have two number ones on your team.
And Kittle. Kittle's show Kittle some love too. He can be in the pass game as well. I mean, not only is he just an extra old lineman that's just going to bully the Lions, but he also can
Yeah, I
run
mean,
routes.
great point there with the extra offensive lineman. I think that goes underrated in George Kittle's game, even though he does get praise for his run blocking. But I just don't know what version of Kittle we're going to get. I mean, he either goes for, 6 catches for 150 or he does 2 catches for 4 yards. There's really no in between with Kittle's game. It's really just a boom or bust situation. But for AJ, you said you were taking the 49ers. Amir, does it get interesting for you, or do you continue your Lions hate?
No, I mean, I'm continuing with the 49ers here. The biggest weakness in the Lions game, this this year has been, them not having a great pass rush outside of Hutch. And the last thing you want is for this Niners team to sit back comfortable. And Brock Purdy is playing well right now. Even if he plays, kind of like a step behind of what he's normally playing. I mean, the last thing you want is for him to sit back there comfortable, giving them time to throw the ball. I mean, you got Debo, you got Kittle, you got weapons that could open up the pass game, and I think the Niners will end up winning this game with these.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just comes down to Brock Purdy. He's not, when you look at him and you look at his skill set, you're like, that's not a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. However, that's the perfect quarterback for Kyle Shanahan. And Kyle Shanahan revitalized Brian Hoyer's career. He made him look relevant on like a 7-win Browns team. Kyle Shanahan just needs a game manager. That's why Jimmy Garoppolo and him had so much success for years and years. He doesn't need the Trey Lance level talent at the quarterback position. I'm sure he can make it work, but he just always had the most success with these game manager, middle of the pack quarterbacks that just get the job done, do what's necessary. I guess that's kind of scary if you can imagine him with a guy like Jalen Hurts. But I think you guys touched on a lot of great points there. San Fran is just too dominant at this point, and they're going to get the win here. Moving on to the NFC title game. Maybe they can stay healthy this time. But then in the AFC side of things, we have the 9-3, of course, Miami Dolphins, maybe the most explosive offense in the NFL. And yes, in this matchup, they are fully healthy. And then for Kansas City, of course, improved defense, but questionable offense at times, as Patrick Mahomes has not had his most memorable season as a starting quarterback. But no doubt here, in my mind at least, still the best player in football in Miami on the road. Can Kansas City pull off an upset, AJ, or do you have Miami continuing this magical run, I guess, to the AFC title game?
I am hopping on the Miami bandwagon. I think going to Miami gives them a huge advantage. If it's Miami going to Kansas City, I don't think it'll be the same game. I think they'll be able to outlast Miami plus slow down their offense. But being at home, Miami is a very dangerous team at home, especially with that pre-motion hiking. I think they find a way to outlast and figure out this very tough Chiefs defense while they stop a very lackluster. I mean, even though it's a top 15 offense, still lackluster Chiefs offense. I think Miami pulls it out.
Yeah, I think Miami, great point there, because Miami definitely has the talent to shut down this Chiefs offense, because Chiefs, you can have a middle of the pack offense, but when it comes to the playoff time, when you're playing the Final Four, the best of the best, you need to be clicking on all cylinders, excuse me. And we know the Chiefs can flip that switch, but as of right now, it's hard to believe that as of what we've seen, that Patrick Mahomes can get enough help when it comes to playoff time. But Amir, do you have the Miami Dolphins going to the Super Bowl, or do you have the Chiefs continuing their dominance?
So I'm going to rock with the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs defense can get them over the hump up until this point. This Miami team has been kind of a roller coaster in their losses. I mean, they have 3 really bad losses where the offense has looked completely, shut down. I mean, they struggled against Denver, or not Denver, but I mean Buffalo earlier this year. I mean their offense looked completely like a completely different team. Against Philly later on, Philly also neutralized their offense. And then you come back late, right after that, you play Kansas City later in the season, and Kansas City holds you to 14 points. Tua, kind of has been inconsistent. He threw two picks against the Jets a couple weeks back, and I think despite Kansas City, lacking this explosiveness like they usually have, I think they can still get this defense, to get them over the top.
So then it comes down to me. It's 1-1, of course. Here, winner, of course, it's a majority draw. They go to the Super Bowl in the AFC, and I would love nothing more than the Miami Dolphins to pull this out. I mean, from the podcast's start, I've always been a huge Tua believer. I think he was underrated for a long time there, but now he's getting his flowers. And one of my favorite players in the league is Jalen Waddle. However, in this matchup, the biggest question with the Dolphins all year is, can they beat a good team? Their 3 losses have come against their 3 best opponents on their schedule. And yes, they're against teams like the Chiefs, the Eagles, and I think the Bills. But they just haven't been able to win that big time game. And for us to say the playoffs start today, and we're expecting them to win big game after big game, again, if the playoffs start today, they have a hand-me win against the CJ Beathard-led Jaguars. So this is really their first big-time game, and we haven't seen them win that big game yet. So even though the Chiefs have their questions on offense, Patrick Mahomes and their excellence, if the playoffs started today, I think that continues, and they would move on to the Super Bowl. But then in the NFC, this is the game of the year, no doubt about it, I think, aside from the Super Bowl, as we have the 10-2 Eagles. They play the 49ers. Last year in the NFC title game, the Eagles ran away with it as they scored early, but then Brock Purdy had a little bit of a shoulder injury. So AJ, do you think in this rubber match, do you think the 49ers can get their get back from last year? Do you think they can even the score and get the biggest win maybe of the rivalry in this NFC title game, or do you think that the Eagles can repeat as NFC champions?
I'm gonna go with the Eagles. I think it's hard to beat a team twice. No matter how they did last season, I think the Eagles will adjust and live up to the hype they had, especially them losing in the Super Bowl, not just beating the 49ers last year, but actually being a pass interference away from beating the Chiefs last year in the Super Bowl. So I think they beat the Niners to make their way back to the Super Bowl. They adjust on defense, and Jalen Hurts continues to just convert on third down, and they continue to be a little bit more physical than that Niners physical defense.
Yeah, I mean, before that matchup this past weekend, I was so confident. I was like, this is a walk in the park, a Super Bowl run for the Eagles. But that last game scared me, and I'm not going to lie, and I did spoil it already. But Amir, why do you have the Eagles in this matchup as they just got blown out by like 20? Why do you have them over this dominant 49ers unit?
So, it's, the NFL, it's any given Sunday. And, we talk about this week by week. It's hard to beat a team twice. And, Philly is that one team where it's hard to beat them twice. And, the Eagles and the Niners kind of have two, weaknesses that are complete opposite. The Eagles have a weakness of starting off slow, and the Niners have a weakness of coming back from, deficits. And as crazy as it sounds, I still think Philly isn't playing their best football yet. I still think exactly. I still think Hurts still hasn't, played to the level which he could play at. And I believe once playoffs start, this Eagles offense is just, all gas, no brakes. And I believe once they jump out to the league against every team they play, it's not coming back.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably, again, maybe game of the year. You can argue there's going to be more hype around this game than the actual Super Bowl, as crazy as that might sound, given who we have in the Super Bowl matchup. But I will agree with you here. I will take the Eagles. I just think, this is a battle of the 2 most complete rosters in football. And I think the 49ers probably are number 1 right now. But given that it's such an even matchup, I'm going to take the team that one is home and the team that has the better quarterback. And that is, to me, the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not the biggest fan of Nick Sirianni. I think, no doubt, the best coach in the league is Kyle Shanahan. It's up there with Sean McVay. But I will go with the Eagles here at home to go back to the Super Bowl. We're back, of course. I say it every single week, and Amir, you're already used to this. I'm not buying Zoom Plus, so we're going to have to reset this each and every Thursday. But we're back here again with the Kelsey Bowl 2.0, the Swift factor. Maybe that plays a part in this one, the Taylor Swift effect. We'll have to see. But we have a rematch from last year where, of course, you touched on it there, AJ. James Bradbury. I mean, if this Eagles team was one pass interference call away, and it was a sketchy pass interference call, at least at that stage, at that level of a game. But nonetheless, it was called, and the Eagles were one penalty away from maybe walking away as the champions last year. However, great game, one of the best Super Bowls I've ever seen. In the rematch, though, we have the Eagles, who at this point have taken down the Dallas Cowboys and the 49ers, 2 very tough defenses. And then the Chiefs, on the other hand, they have had one more game. So they've taken down, who would they take down in the first round at this point? They take down the Colts and Gardner Minshew, and then they took down Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. And then in the AFC title game, they took down the Miami Dolphins. So A very credible run from both of these teams. But AJ, I'll start with you here. In the rematch from last year, do you have the Eagles getting revenge or the Chiefs repeating as Super Bowl champions? Of course, we haven't had that since the Patriots in the early 2000s.
I think this can be a potential rivalry going forward for either the Chiefs and whoever comes out the NFC, because I don't know who's coming out the AFC. I mean, besides Browns, of course. But I think the Eagles do get over the hump this time. Like I said, and like you said, 3, 4, 5 times, they were super close to beating them last year with an even better Chiefs team. Even though the Eagles defense is playing like complete trash right now, I think they are able to get over Mahomes, probably throwing for about 300 yards plus 3 touchdowns. I think they will be able to run the ball on that Chiefs defense and figure them out a little bit. So I will go with the Eagles.
So you have the Eagles winning. Who's going to be the Super Bowl MVP in your eyes from this Eagles unit?
Eagles, I'm going to say the handsome light skin himself, Jalen Hurts, Mr. Perfect. No, but yeah, I got Jalen Hurts.
We'll collectively have to get together to put some hate on that man. Now bring him down, his self-esteem a little bit. But Amir, in this matchup again, Super Bowl rematch, who do you have coming out on top in 2024?
I'm going to take Philly. This Chiefs team, last year was a lot better. This Eagles team is back now, with the chip on their shoulder, which I think is the biggest factor. And, the Eagles mantra is winning up front. I think they'll dominate up front on both sides of the ball. The Chiefs won't be able to run the ball. And, the Eagles secondary hasn't been playing well. But like I said, come playoff time, up to this point, I think the Eagles will be playing on a whole different level. I think they'll control this football game. And, granted the fact that, some penalties might not go Kansas City's way like how it did last year. I'm going to take Philly winning this game with ease.
So I'll ask you the same question. Who is going to be the Super Bowl MVP from the Eagles, unless you have some crazy situation where the Chiefs have the MVP? Who's going to be the MVP for you in this game?
It'll definitely be Hurts, especially with the media kind of being on your side, kind of like the NFL and, publicity being on your side. I think Hurts is going to come in, they're obviously going to hype him up. And, he'll probably have like a somewhat, a slightly above mediocre game, and they'll probably still give him MVP regardless. So Jalen Hurts.
Well, majority says the Eagles are winning the Super Bowl, but I will agree with you guys here in Jason Kelsey's retirement game, most likely. I will go with the Eagles as, again, prior to the season, I said it was going to be Bengals and Eagles. Bengals, of course, suffered some injuries and would not make it to this point now at this point. But to save my opinion from prior to the year, I will go with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think just a lot of people walk around with this Mamba mentality that Kobe Bryant had, but I think Jalen Hurts is one of the few athletes that actually have that, where he's humble, but he's driven, and you could tell he wants to be the best in the sport. A lot of people have it for 1 week or 1 year, and then it goes away. Jalen Hurts has had it from the start, even at Oklahoma, and of course Alabama. I just think that is the edges that they need. And like you guys said, the Chiefs have a better defense this year, but if the Eagles can score and start off hot, I think this is no doubt going to be a year for the Chiefs. And I don't think that this will be the same level of game as last year. I think the Eagles will probably run away with this one in the second half. And that is, of course, no discredit to Patrick Mahomes and Patrick McJesus. Yeah, give me the Eagles here, and I'm going to go with Shaq Leonard as the Super Bowl MVP. Of course, newest signing. But moving over to our top 10s here, and of course, AJ, as we move throughout these lists, just stop us. If you want to add in your opinion, just go ahead and stop us. But for my personal list, and Amir, I was too lazy to add yours. No shocker there. But a team that fell out of my top 10, and I believe yours as well, was the Cleveland Browns. And it's really not really, I guess, our fault completely. Of course, we're still losing games, but just the injuries have piled up to a point where we're just not a top 10 level team anymore. Our defense is still great, but it can only do so much. Some teams that are right outside are the Packers, of course, with Jordan Love, Jordan Rodgers, the next great quarterback for the Packers. I don't know how they keep doing it. And then Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew and this team's won 4 straight, and their defense has been better, even though they just got rid of Shaq Leonard. So to me, I have the Colts there right outside as well. And then this is our from last week's video from last Thursday. This was our 6 through 10. I'm on the left, Amir's on the right. Take a good look, as again we have some similarities, but some differences as well. And then here's our 1 through 5. Same thing. I'm on the left, Amir's on the right. But then we move over to this week. New background. We're officially in it. The Santa season. December is officially upon us, but Amir, go through your 6 through 10 going into this new week of football.
Denver and Houston are definitely in the top 10 in my opinion. Last week kind of proved that they are right there neck and neck. But Houston ended up coming out with the win. And so that's why I put them over Denver. The reason why I got the Jags still at 8 is because they lost. Obviously Trevor Lawrence got hurt. I think if he stays in that game, they still win. And I'm keeping them right there just because I'm gonna wait to see how Beathard plays. When he came into that game, he still played solid. And I'm still just gonna wait for now to see how they kind of react. To him being out, Trevor Lawrence being out, and seeing that this offense can still keep up that pace. And I got Detroit at 7, and I got Miami over Detroit because I think they match up well against Detroit in the recent defensive struggles, the recent secondary and D-line struggles. And so by that point, that's my 6 to 10.
So my 6 through 10 is relatively the same. The Jaguars dropped to 10 for me simply because of Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk. I think this week it's a possible upset. The Browns could get the win because I think Calvin Ridley is going to be double teamed and Denzel Ward is back. So I think if we trap Calvin Ridley, we're really just going to have to focus on stopping the run. I'll let Evan Ingram beat us, right? I'm going to trust that we can stop Evan Ingram.
Right.
But I think Jaguars at 10 for me simply because of the injury. The Broncos, they stay at 9 despite the loss. Mr. Unlimited is still playing of that caliber.
He's washed.
Mr. Unlimited. You got to find your alter ego is a good way to put it. The Texans, after a win, they move up 1, and Tank Dell unfortunately went down with an injury. One of the most exciting rookie wide receivers, but they move up a spot for me. They're one of the most explosive offenses in the league. And then my 6 and 7 stay the same. The Dolphins, Cowboys, we're waiting on these teams to win that big time game. And until that point, they can't move into my top 5. At least the Lions, for me, have won a big time game. I know there's an asterisk next to it, but they've won that. So I'll ask you, AJ, here. Do you have any similarities in your top 10? If you have a top 10, are there any changes you would make to either of our lists?
No, only changes I still have my top 10. I mean, 6 through 10 would be Chiefs, Dolphins, Jags, Texans, and then the Broncos.
You have the Chiefs at 6. Go ahead and explain that to us. I know the Chiefs had 1 loss, but why would you have them all the way at 6?
I have them at 6. I do like the Lions a little bit more. I know they played a little bit easier of a schedule when they beat the Chiefs without Chris Jones, but I do not like how the Chiefs offense is looking. They're looking very, they do have Mahomes, but you can't help having receivers drop at passes and not get open. No matter how good Mahomes is, he can throw them open. They run the wrong routes, miscommunication this late in the season. They can't fix it. The list is, like what Stephen A says, the list is fluid. So, but I currently do have the Chiefs at 6.
That's shocking. But then moving over to the top 5, Amir, go ahead and break down your top 5, and we have a big shakeup there at the top.
Yeah, the Niners at 1. I think they proved it. This past game, and outside that 3-game stretch, they've been playing dominant football. This is ridiculous how great they're playing. I still got Philly at 2. Philly lost to the best team in football. I think it's those 2, and after that, it's not even close. And I got Baltimore at 3 just because Baltimore has been consistent, and they kind of show that their defense can still carry the load. Their run game can still make stuff happen, even without Mark Andrews. Things might change as these coming weeks, but I'm going to keep them at 3 for now. KC has to bump down. KC losing against Green Bay in brutal fashion. Their offense looked atrocious, despite how great Green Bay has been playing these past weeks. Their offense, they really got to figure this out big time. But I will still give them the edge over Dallas. Dallas is just now starting to get hot. KC, with Mahomes and Kelsey, with Andy Reid, we know what they're capable of. And so that's why I'm giving them right over, the edge over Dallas.
Oh, well, that's your top 5. My top 5, we do have the same number 1, and I was reluctant to do it because, again, over the last month, the Eagles have had the toughest schedule in football, and they almost went a perfect 4-0. But I will, if you get blown out by 30 by a team that's right on your tail as far as the power rankings, they get to move up. So to me, the Niners are at 1, just like you. Eagles are at 2. To me, Eagles still have the highest chance to win the Super Bowl, in my opinion. The Chiefs, I have them at 3 instead of 4. I just trust Patrick Mahomes more, and that's really what it comes down to. If these teams matched up today, I would bet on the Chiefs, and they might even be the underdog in that matchup. But I think I just trust Patrick Mahomes a little bit more than Lamar Jackson in big game situations. And then for the Detroit Lions, I can't talk there. Stick with me, of course. The Lions for me at 5, they just over the Dolphins and the Cowboys. They have that notable win. Again, there's an asterisk, but it's a big win nonetheless. And I will take that over a team like the Dolphins and Cowboys who have yet to have that big statement victory against a notable opponent. So that is our 1 through 5s. AJ, what is your 1 through 5? And is there anything you disagree with here?
My 1 through 5, I do have the Niners and Eagles as my top 2. I have Ravens at 3, the Cowgirls at 4, which I don't know how, but they've been playing great. And then Lions at 5. Just the Chiefs, it's controversial that out of the top 5, I think they're just, even though their defense is playing great this year, I still think they're right outside that top 5.
I mean, yeah, you can't really argue with it, again, with how their receivers have been playing around Patrick Mahomes. He's not getting much help. But then we move over to the race for Caleb. One day this will be the race for Diamante, but as of right now, it is the race for Caleb Williams. And again, some would argue you don't want a green arrow in this case because that means you're actually getting worse. You're getting closer to the number 1 pick in the draft. But for these teams, their playoff hopes are kind of dead at this point. So I guess you kind of want that green arrow. The Bears with the Panthers pick here. This is the Panthers record. So the Bears technically have the number 1 pick as of right now, and they'll probably end up with that. But if not, it'll be the Patriots. The Patriots have not looked good. Their defense has been good, but they cannot score the football. So the Patriots are at 2. Cardinals drop 1 with a win as Kyler Murray continues to sabotage the Caleb Williams rumors. Washington at 4, and the Bears with their actual first-round pick with a win, they drop to 5. So Bears still 2 top 5 picks. But I guess I'll ask you guys this. AJ, who do you think will have the number 1 pick by the time the season ends? In about a month or two, do you think the Bears can hold on with that Panthers pick? Or do you think the Patriots will take it over?
No, I think easily the Panthers. I mean, Bryce Young is having a miserable first year, and his coach is already fired. So, I mean, that's not even without the organization being dysfunctional. So I'm going with the Bears. Patriots defense has looked great the past couple of games. Their offense is just atrocious.
I mean, they lost the game 6-0. That tells you all you need to know about their offense. Amir, I'll ask you the same thing. I mean, out of these 5 teams, or do you think another team can just go on a crazy losing streak and grab the number 1 pick?
No, I mean, I said this earlier in the year. I think the Patriots will end up getting that number 1 pick. I think the NFL, everything is set up for a reason. And I mean, the rest of the games, I mean, they got Pittsburgh, KC, Denver, Buffalo, and then, a divisional game against the Jets, that final week. I mean, the Panthers on the other end, the Panthers have some winnable games. I mean, they got New Orleans, they got Atlanta. Then they got the Buccaneers again, which they almost beat this past week. So, I mean, they have some somewhat winnable games. And, I think the NFL has strategically planned this schedule for the Patriots to get Caleb Williams.
I don't know about I know I'm not going to go that far and say that there was a script prior to the year, but I can definitely
It's rigged.
At this point, I can see Caleb Williams replacing Tom Brady and being like, the new headline, can Caleb Williams be the next Tom Brady? And Caleb Williams, if he didn't have enough hype coming into the league, he's going to have to live up to Tom Brady's shoes from day one. So I can already see that happening, and I would agree. I think the Patriots have a higher chance right now to get that number 1 pick over the Panthers, but I hope the Panthers get it, in all honesty, or the Bears, rather. But then for last week's record, of course, I was 8-5. That Chiefs game screwed me, as well as a couple others. And then Amir, you were 10-3. It's the first week in a long time you've beat me. And yes, I'm throwing it out there just to hate. But on the season, I'm 134-59, about 69% of the games right. Amir, not too far behind, 129-64. Amir, what are your thoughts on last week's games?
Yeah, I mean, last week's games, I had a couple games that were risky, but I took the risk and I got rewarded. But I also had a couple games where, I thought were, easy dubs, like that Chiefs game you just said. I don't know how they lost. That kind of messed up the record a little bit. But yeah, I was satisfied how this week went.
Yeah, I mean, you're only 5 games behind now, and I guess, anything can happen. But then week 14, it's the last week for bye weeks until, of course, we head into the playoff stretch. The Cardinals, the Commanders, 2 teams in the bottom 5. I guess they need a rest from losing so much. So they get their much-needed bye week, I guess is a good way to put it. And I guess I'll ask you guys this: who needs this bye week more, the Cardinals or the Commanders? If either team, I mean, both of them they both suck. But AJ, do you think a team needs this bye week more than the other?
No, I think they should not even take a bye week. They just need to just put their young
Just
guys
keep
out.
losing.
Yeah, just play each other for the Tank Bowl. Keep developing the young guys. You know, they both should be banned from having a bye week for this terrible season they had. Besides Kyler, that's my boy.
Amir, do you think a team needs the bye week more than the other here? I have an answer for sure.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think both teams, need this bye week so they can figure out how to sell both franchises because both seasons are absolutely horrible.
Man,
I mean, realistically, both of the seasons are done for. Arizona, needs to take this week off to figure out how they're going to lose every single game to plan for the future.
Kyler Murray has other plans.
Exactly, which I
he's
don't see
born in
happening.
a tank.
We've been saying, we think Kyler Murray's gonna, pretty much screw this team out of that number 1 draft pick. And at the same time, Kyler's also still kind of trying out to prove himself. Like, hey, like I'm still active.
Right.
I still got a lot of juice left, and I'm looking for a new opportunity.
I think Kyler's definitely the most disrespected quarterback in the NFL, and again, that's another guy I've been a big fan of coming out of Oklahoma. Of course, former Heisman winner. But I think neither of these teams need it more. I think Sam Howell needs it the most. This is the dude that's the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. And I think his body just needs a rest from being sacked 8 times a game. So to me, neither of the teams, but Sam Howell, he needs this bye week pretty bad. And then in week 14 predictions here, of course, on the left side, you see the slate of games. And then, of course, our predictions. There's not a lot of differences here. We differ on this Colts and Bengals game, and we differ on this Buccaneers and Falcons game. To me, for the Buccaneers and Falcons, it really comes down to I would rather see the Buccaneers at this point make the playoffs because I know they can make games more interesting than the Atlanta Falcons. And I think Arthur Smith is no doubt a bottom 5 coach in the NFL, in my opinion. So I have that reason there. And then I think the Colts can keep rolling against Jake Browning on the road. Might be an upset pick, but I'm going to roll with the road team in both of these matchups. But then Amir, I mean, basic reasoning here or any matchups you want to talk about on the screen?
I'll talk about this Bengals and Colts matchup. This matchup I was kind of torn between, thinking about for a while because, I even waited to watch that game versus Jacksonville to make this pick because, I'm looking at it. I'm kind of like, man, I want to see how Jake Browner does. And that man completely shocked everybody. I mean, I didn't think he was going to play that well, but like the biggest, thing that stood out to me was the fact that the Bengals are finally running the football. And, I think they're going to go into this game realizing, the Colts run defense has not looked good at all this season. And, I think once they get Mixon involved, at home, I think this offense could still elevate like they did against Jacksonville.
Yeah, I do want your opinion on this one game, AJ. I think one of the most interesting matchups on the screen is the LA Rams and the Baltimore Ravens. The Rams have won a couple games straight. Aaron Donald looks back to his prime version, in all honesty. And of course, this offense. I mean, they just played the best defense in football in the Cleveland Browns, and they took care of business. Granted, some other things went in their favor with Joe Flacco. Regardless, they still took care of business. Cooper Kupp came back to relevancy, but they did lose Puka Nacua. Do you think that this offense, with Kyron Williams back in a full workload, Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and this defense that looks better, do you think they have a chance in this matchup against Baltimore?
No, I think coming fresh off a bye, that's probably the last time you want to see a Baltimore team, especially coming off. They still have a crazy good defense. They still have Lamar, and they have, Flowers has played solid this season, despite their other Andrews. They still have Livers, the younger tight end, coming up. So I'm still gonna rock with the Ravens. I think they're still figuring out a way especially without Nacua. He's a huge part of their offense now. Cooper Kupp looks like he's starting to go that little Michael Thomas route. I don't know if he's looking washed or.
I think that injury is a lot worse than it was originally reported. At least that's what I'm hoping at this point.
Those soft tissue injuries are not they're not the ones to play with. But I'm definitely rocking out with the Ravens. Fresh off a bye week, I don't think they lose.
Moving over to the other slate of games, and again, there's no differences here. I mean, we actually had like the same teams for all of these, but Amir, I'm going to give you the freedom here. Out of all these matchups, we have a lot of interesting ones. Mr. Unlimited against the no defense team in the Chargers, Buffalo and Kansas City. That's always a classic. Philly and Dallas. Of course, Jordan Rodgers taking on Tommy DeVito. Now, there's a lot of interesting matchups here. Seattle and San Fran. Can Seattle continue to score that many points against a dominant defense? I'll give you the freedom here, Amir. Pick one of these matchups and give me your reasoning behind it.
The matchup I was kind of stuck on the most was this Chargers and Denver game. And we obviously know the Chargers have not been playing that well. But I'm worried about Denver, after just winning 5 straight and after losing a game like that they should have won. I wouldn't be surprised if, they kind of come into this game with a lot of tension going on, kind of, down. And I still went ahead and chose Denver based off of what we've seen from their defense. From this this past stretch of games, but I would not be surprised if the Chargers ended up pulling it out.
Yeah, I think I want to ask you guys. I mean, what's happened to Austin Eckler? I mean, he was beginning of the year, he looked like his normal self, but then he had a little bit of an injury, and then he comes back, and this is a guy that's getting 17, 20 touches a game, which is the usual for Austin Eckler, if not more. But this is a guy that's he's running like Eddie Lacy, and he's definitely lost a step. So what has happened to Austin Eckler, AJ? Do you think there's any, rhyme or reason why he's seemingly lost a step overnight?
I think it's just the natural state of being a running back. I mean, he's had a good couple of years in the league. I don't think he's going to take a necessary step back. Probably just a couple nicks and bruises, but that's the exact reason why teams don't pay running backs. That's the exact reason. I mean, Jonathan Taylor just got hurt with the Colts, and they just paid him this offseason with Zach Moss already leading the league or second in the league in rushing. So this is part of the sad life of being a running back, but he is needed in this Chargers offense especially with Quentin Johnson looking the way he is with no Mike Williams.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Mike Williams too. He's one of those receivers I actually really like to watch out of Clemson. But Amir, I mean, I'll ask you the same thing. Do you think there's any rhyme or reason behind why Austin Eckler looks washed seemingly again overnight?
Yeah, I mean, everything AJ just said, the running back position is a position where, us as athletes, we want to kind of have players backs, when it comes to getting paid, when it comes to signing these big contracts. But at the same time, I mean, running backs peak in their prime only last a few years. And, it's so risky to pay these running backs because, I mean, your body is beat down week by week. And, I think everything that's taking a toll on Austin Eckler, especially with him being an undersized back, not being, a durable big back that can take a lot of load, get a lot of carries over time. I think it's finally starting to show in this game.
Yeah, I mean, Father Time is undefeated against anybody other named than LeBron James. We even see that with a guy that you mentioned there, a guy that's bigger built, and he's a tank of a football player, Derrick Henry. We even see him getting less and less work over the weeks that he was in years prior. It's finally, Father Time's undefeated, and it's even catching up to the biggest of backs of a guy like Derrick Henry. Again, these running backs, I mean, you want to see them get paid. You want to see these guys get the money they deserve. But at the same time, it doesn't make a lot of sense if all of these guys can really just fade overnight. But the last thing I want to ask you guys about, especially AJ, I know you're a big college football fan. Did the committee get it right? I'm going to throw that question out there. Of course, Michigan, Washington, and Texas, all conference champions in their own right. But then the debate came in where Florida State, they're 13-0. They've beat 4 or 5 notable top 25 opponents. Georgia, of course, lost that game to Alabama, so I understand why they didn't make it. But I want to ask you, did the committee get it right? And if they didn't, what would your top 4 look like out of these 6 teams?
Honestly, I think they got it right. I mean, I don't mind having both Texas and Bama in, even though they had that game in. So, I mean, Bama was able to beat Georgia. But, I mean, the last 2 games, they struggled against your trash Gators. So, I mean, they struggled versus them. Then
that's strike one. That's strike one.
2 more to go. But and then they pulled out a win versus Louisville, who's not a bad team, overrated as well. But I mean, they got it right. I did not want to see a Florida State team go against Michigan with their third string true freshman quarterback, who, unlike everybody used the Ohio State 2014 argument. I mean, we killed Wisconsin. It was like 1,000-0 in that game with Cardale Jones. So of course we're going to make the playoffs, but they got it right. Alabama beat Georgia. They were perfectly fine getting in. Washington, I mean, that's all they can do with 4 teams.
Yeah, I mean, next year, of course, it extends to 12 teams, and then no one's going to really care. If you're the 13th seed and you're arguing about, hey, I should have been in the playoffs, you should have did more. You should have won more games, because if you're arguing as a 3-loss team, hey, we should have been in. No, you shouldn't. Okay, just shut up and go home. But Amir, I'll ask you the same thing as top 4 teams. Do you think they got it right? Or do you think they should have shown the respect to Florida State in their season despite their quarterback injury?
No, well, I mean, honestly, I thought they got it right, just for the simple fact that, I mean, Bama, you know, is better than Florida State, as real as that sounds. And, I think with Florida State, I mean, they got to realize that, we all watched them the past two games. Like if Jordan Travis would have got hurt, this past game, their 13-0 game, if he would have got hurt later in the game, they would have won the game. The committee would have let them in. But the
I
fact that he
agree.
got hurt and they played two whole games and didn't look good at all, obviously they're going to get bumped down. And, Jordan Travis came out and said, he wished he got hurt sooner. But I mean, shoot, you guys played two whole games. The offense looked absolutely atrocious. Obviously, the defense looks solid against these terrible teams. And realistically, I mean, if you end up sneaking in as a fourth seed, it's going to be, a rematch of like Georgia versus TCU last year. It's going to be the same exact result.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it there. That's the exact point I was going to bring up. And sure, on paper, they should be in. But again, the quarterback is the most, you can argue it's the most important position in sports. It can really make or break a team. I mean, you could take Lamar off the Ravens. Nobody takes them serious. You could take Mahomes off the Chiefs. They're not even a playoff team. And Mahomes on that team makes them a Super Bowl contender. You look at the Bengals right now. You take Joe Burrow off and no one takes him seriously anymore. A quarterback is the most important position in sports, and it is what takes a team from an okay team to a playoff team, and it takes a team from a playoff team to a Super Bowl team, right? So to me, I think they did get it right. Jordan Travis, of course, amazing season, but injuries are a part of sports, and you got to take that into account. Also, let's not discredit Alabama. They just beat a team that hasn't lost in almost 3 years. So to me, I think they no doubt need to be in, and they also have the pedigree. I mean, I think they're going to put up a better fight against Michigan. And of course, but any last thoughts from either of you here about the playoff? And I guess I'll ask you, which matchup are you excited to see most in the first round?
Honestly, that
Honestly,
Washington
I'm
Texas.
excited to see Michigan lose.
Yeah, you're
No, that too.
so AJ, you said the Washington Texas one, of course, Michael Penix against Quinn
I'm
Ewers.
scoring. Yeah.
I think why is that matchup more exciting for you over the Michigan Alabama?
I mean, that Michigan Alabama game will be great. Hardball and Saban pretty much hate each other. But I just like Washington, Texas. I don't think there's going to be a stop on this game, the whole game.
Yeah,
That's just
a
going to
lot
be
of
a
points.
full shootout. So that's going to be insane.
Yeah, I think Michigan and Alabama, we've seen that, before. I think I would agree. Michael Penix and Quinn Ewers, some of the most exciting young quarterbacks. I would agree with that. But Amir, you said you're really just waiting for Michigan to lose. Why
Yes.
is that?
I mean, go Bucks at the end of the day. You
Bucks.
know, but this Washington game and Texas game is going to be great. Honestly, I love this playoff matchup this year. It's definitely better than last year, in my opinion.
A lot more parity this year. Any team can win it.
Exactly, and this is the one year where I feel like it's an even playing field for each team. I feel like there's no set favorite. I think the team that's kind of being overlooked the most is Texas, obviously for reasons. But man, the fact that Alabama got in, seeing
That's
everybody's
good.
reactions, it made this playoff 10 times more entertaining. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, absolutely. But ultimately, that is going to do it here for today's show. Longer episode today, but we touched on a lot of things. I mean, we went through the week 14 predictions. What if the NFL playoffs started today? We ran through all of that. Of course, we also gave some predictions here for the college football playoffs. So jam-packed show. We touched on a lot of things. Later tonight, I'm going to be releasing my start-sit options in fantasy football for this upcoming week. Of course, it's the last week before the fantasy playoffs. So if that interests you, go ahead and check that out. Next week, we have top 10 duos on Tuesday. But AJ, first time on the show. Any last thoughts before we get out of here?
I'm going all in on the Dolphins bandwagon. We're going Tua, Tyreek. They need to give Tyreek that MVP.
I agree with you. Amir, any last thoughts before we get out of here? Of course, you'll be back next Thursday.
Nope, I'll be back. I'm ready to go, man.
Yeah, I mean, next Thursday, we have something really exciting planned for you guys, something that we've seen floating around the internet. So, of course, we'll see you guys that next Tuesday or Thursday, excuse me. But until then, stay happy, stay healthy. Get out of here.